welcome to part 2 of the...
Might be part 3 depending on, there's a bit of a camera funny thing there, but I'll try and clip them together, so it should be part 2 anyway.
Hopefully this will be part 2 of the Punters Academy debut show. Look, we're just going through some questions from people that have been sent in. The next one is from Owen, and it says, "Hi Paul, here is my question for the R2W Racing Watch Educational Program. Sharp changes in distance and how to treat them. Our Beta Sam accepted for 2 races last Saturday, a 3-year-old race over 1400 metres and an open age 2000 metre race. At his last start he had performed very well in an 1800 metre race. I wanted to back him in the 2000 metre race but was unsure what to do with him back to 1400, so I stayed out. He ran the 1400 metre race and bolted it. How do you treat horses in these types of situations? Specifically, what factors may I have overlooked when assessing his chances?" Do you want to go first on that, John?
I will. It was a funny situation, and I obviously know a lot about it because the jockey who was booked was Tim Clark, and I know that they're looking to sort of bring the horse back and try to get to an Epsom. So knowing too much about this is going to affect me, but in situations like this in isolation, I'd probably, like Gay Waterhouse, back in distance is not as powerful as a lot of trainers might be. So it is stable specific how I will treat them. I do like horses back in distance, particularly myself, because it means they're usually going to be as strong as they possibly can be over that distance today, because they've exceeded it previously and come back. 18 back to 14's a little bit tricky, and if his running style's important here because he's a pretty hard going leading type. I would expect I would treat him a little bit more positively than I would if he was a back marker over 1800 metres coming back to 1400 here. He also got the setup on Saturday of a fast Rosehill track, which was another positive. So it was very easy to be positive about him here, but this is again a specific situation where it's kind of lined up for him. 18 back to 14 is not normally a positive from my point of view. Unless it's this type of horse with this sort of setup. So it's a bit of a lucky situation for this horse for mine that it was such a positive. And funnily, like you say, I wanted to back him in the 2000. I would have been more confident about him in the 2000 because he got a similar setup and he was going up in distance and he'd come off a hard run. So it kind of worked out well for him both ways. He's going that well, the horse.
Yeah, I think that's right. And for me, I actually backed the horse. I found its profile to be compelling in that, from a ratings perspective, it stood out on my WQR ratings. Its run style was going to always be up there on the lead and leading and dominating on that drier track. Backing distance, hard fit, all those were positive factors that...
The right stable too, that you knew they were going to test them out. They weren't going to hold it up and try and turn it into a silly sit and sprint.
Exactly. They were going to run it at a genuine tempo, and it was going to be harder for those other horses to catch it. Obviously, the race fitness thing was probably a key factor for me, and also the run style of the horse. But as John said, if it was a sort of a middle pinner in terms of its settling position or a back marker, it'd be a definite no-no for me. Stable is relevant. Obviously, you've got to consider that, and the horse, the individual horse is relevant. You know, has the horse shown that it can come back in distance before? This horse had, but the drop back in distance was only a fairly small one compared to a 1800 back to 1400. But look, that's a great question, Owen, and
probably another one that you could spend an hour and a half talking about pretty easily. They're different sort of sprint distances as opposed to middle, as opposed to, they're all very different, but it is a very important factor, and hopefully we've done it some justice in that short amount of time.
Indeed. Okay. Hi Paul, I realise that this is a very broad and possibly endless subject to discuss. However, perhaps some insights into what profiles is a good bet. Plenty of opinions around that state hard and fast rules like don't bet on maidens. However, more insight in a particular of what previous runs to look for when doing the form. What runs can be forgiven, stepping up or down in distance, how far out of previous run versus today distance can be considered. I personally find the biggest factor lacking in other services is selection criteria. As an example, in my opinion, is the BetSmart guys who have extensively covered psychology and bank management extensively. I know that this is a very in-depth subject and would it be impossible to cover in a couple of videos, so perhaps some explanations on how yourself or John have decided on particular selections in your respective services. Well, Ben, this is a a question that probably warrants a separate discussion.
A month?
Yeah, it would take a long time to get through. Perhaps
I myself, every selection I send out, I give more detailed, more often than not, but definitely give an explanation as to why I've come to the conclusion that the horse is a good bet this time. And myself asking, like, this is my problem. When I sort of started my service, it was because people would say, oh, I've got a tip for race 6 number 8 today. Well, why do you like it? And if they couldn't tell me, I'd discredit it totally. And I'm sure, like, every time I've spoken to Paul, similar situation, you've got facts and figures behind why you have come to us, and whether you share that with everyone or not, I'm not sure.
No,
but
I don't.
yeah, you don't. But I don't tell everyone everything, but I do give them an explanation. Say it's in form. This is why I think it's hard fit. I think it's whatever. I think the track's suiting it. There's conditions today that suit the horse, and I usually try and outline why. And people can pick up from that. I've also done a video obviously explaining how I do pre and post race, and I do reviews and previews and stuff that sort of give away a lot of the stuff I do, a lot more than you're tight and try and keep your secrets to yourself, which is fine. That's all right.
Well, there you go, Ben. I mean, from John's point of view, you can go and watch those videos on the racingwatch.com.au website, and Johnny can just go and have a look at those pre and post race analysis videos.
Yeah, they're on there. They're on there. They're on YouTube at the moment. They probably won't be up there for too long. They'll just be on the site. But yeah, and all of my reviews and previews are basically where I talk through why I dislike and like things. So it wouldn't be too hard to work out why I do. Whereas your secret algorithms have got a lot more behind them that not even I will ever know. So, which is the secret to most people do it that way. And you're like, it's not as if you can't give reasons why you have already today, why you like RB at Salmon for things like that. But it's not as if it's a catalogue you're just going to hand over.
No, I don't think you can quantify it that way either, John.
No.
There's a lot to it, Ben, and what I could suggest you do is you need to have a process of how you identify the bets. So my recommendation would be to research, use the program that you've got. You've got my software. Use that to its advantage. Use the power of it to analyse all of the races and have a look for pockets of perhaps areas that the market doesn't value correctly in terms of what's under bet, and maybe look at combining some of those factors together and developing a simple process in terms of how you might go about identifying the bets. It's something that I do, and there's actually a question about that that we'll get into in more detail.
Possibly
today.
Reverse thinking. So say you're getting these BetSmart tips, I don't know how they're provided or whether they give you a staking plan or what it is, but maybe sort of like reverse engineering it, going back and trying to work out why they, like what was behind, why was this horse suited today. That possibly could be a good way for you to find a gap in the market. If they're performing well and they're providing winning information, usually there's something behind it. So there might be secrets they don't want to discuss with you, but you can reverse engineer yourself and find a gap that way.
And you can actually do that, Ben, with the software. There's a thing called an R2W list test, excuse me, that allows you to import a list of selections, whether it be from BetSmart or any other rating service or tipping service that you might have received, and you can then run an analysis over about 200 variables, and that analysis will show you where the strengths and weaknesses lie when correlated against the data in the Ratings to Win Access database. So Ben, I think that's a good starting point for you. And
you haven't told me about this. I'm going to have to do this myself.
You might have to have a look at your own job.
Yeah, exactly.
But look, it's something that's not used a lot by the people, but certainly it's something that's there, and just what you said then, John, prompted me to talk about it.
Well, it's funny because I've started a few people on trial over the last month, and I've had a heap of people come back and say, I've analysed all your results and you're better at this track and this track and you're better at these distances and these trainers and all these sorts of things that I've never really probably had the time to go back. But if I know that I can just import it into a system and it'll basically do it for me,
Yep.
It sounds much more appealing, so I might do that myself.
Okay. Next one. Hey Paul, love the concept, mate. Would love to hear from both yourself and John's take on how you go about assessing bets on a daily basis. Do you frame markets for every race, every day, or do you use other tools such as the selection analyzer within Access to identify the races that you need to then take a deeper look into? John?
Myself, I've probably got horses that I'm looking looking out for, that have performed particularly well, and I think they will be underplayed at their next start for whatever reason. So I've got those sort of, basically black bookers is the easiest way to put it, and then we'll go through and analyse the race and price the race itself. So two separate systems that are running concurrently, sort of alongside each other. But at the end of the day, even the black bookers, I'm pricing them into a market, and it's all about the price and how that race sets up to whether I back it or not. I'm not just going to back it because it's a black booker. So basically the framing of the market's far more important than say a selection analyzer, which I assume is just providing, you're putting in a set of criteria and it's producing. So even it doesn't matter what it produces, I still want to quantify it against the race for the day.
Yeah, so Sam, from my point of view, I use the selection finder and analyzer to identify races of potential interest. Now, there are certain factors that I look for in a race, and also the setup of the horses engaged, the entrants in that race, to flag potential opportunities. And I get a list of those races automatically produced through Axis, which you can do yourself. And from that, I then delve into those of interest. So if I feel that there's an opportunity, on a cursory glance of a few different factors, I then delve into that race and develop a full market for that race. And obviously, like you, John, it comes down to value. Just because you've got a horse that's a black booker, just because you've got a horse that might meet a particular selection criteria, doesn't always make it an automatic bet.
It finds the wrong race, it finds the wrong jockey, it finds the wrong whatever. There's a lot of ways that, absolutely, doesn't matter what price it is exactly, it could be. So it's all about the race set up for that day itself.
So it's just about being consistent, Sam, in the process, and if you need more help with that, happy to talk to you on a one-on-one basis regarding that. Okay, this is from Darcy. Thanks for the heads up, guys. Here's a question. I get selections from a source that indicates or that includes his confidence rating, i.e. he may be 91% confident that a horse should win. My usual way of betting is to return 4% of my betting bank regardless of the confidence rating. However, I'm toying with the idea of using this rating, i.e. if my objective is $400 on a race and the price of the horse is $3.20, I would normally outlay $125. Now Darcy, that's what we call proportional betting. That's how I bet, primarily to take out 4% of my bank. That does vary on certain races, but for the most part it is around that 4% mark, and I believe that that's the right way to go from a betting point of view. But what you've then illustrated is, if I then took that $125 and multiplied it by the 91% confidence rating, that would reduce your stake to $114. That I'd advise against. Now, if he's saying that he believes that there's a 91% confidence that this horse will win, he's essentially saying this horse is a $1.10 chance.
But is he saying that, or is he saying he's got 91% chance that he's on that race? Well, I think it'd be highly unlikely that anyone would say that they're 91% confident a horse will win. I would do that once every 5 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So I would say, if you maybe answer it both ways.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
if he's 91% confident in his $3.20 selection,
yes,
then it might be okay to treat it this way. Because if he's saying 50%, he's bringing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if he's treating it as 91%, then definitely you want to be having your normal stake on it. Yeah, especially if he's saying it's $1.10 and it's $3.20, you want to be having your max.
Of course.
Yeah, you want to be having your...
And the overlay is going to create itself by virtue of the fact that there's a major differential between the actual assessed price and the actual market price. I think at the end of the day, the correct approach is to stake the way you have been. You've obviously got to be confident that the ratings or the markets that you're getting are going to actually deliver an edge for you, though, because if they're not, then no matter what staking plan you use, you're going to end up losing.
And if it's successful, you might do the Dominic Byrne approach of a bank for your 4% and then maybe run a different bank at your proportional, and just to see how it runs over time, or run them alongside each other. So if he's saying 91% confidence, have 91% of your bet on a different bank, but you know, don't interfere with whatever you're already doing, probably.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Or at least on paper run it that way and just see how it works out. But it's interesting because I've never seen anyone display, I don't know how I can say that I'm 91% confident in a race, but I'm not saying it's not right, but it's just sort of, it's a strange way way to.
I think you've got to like the horse first, Darcy, and you've got to have reasons for wanting to back the horse. It's great to get tips, it's great to have ratings, but at the end of the day you need to probably do a little bit of the homework yourself.
Yes.
And have an understanding of what it is that appeals to you about the horse that you're intending on betting on. And on that basis, I think you need to have a consistent staking approach. So the progressive, or should I say the proportional betting approach that you're taking currently, I think that's probably the right track for you to follow.
Look, yeah, because at the end of the day, no one can be 100% confident even in their confidence level.
Sure.
So if you're beating it with consistency over time and sort of allowing for a buffer either way on his confidence level, what actually happens in the race, consistency is probably the key. So I'd nearly take back what I said before, but it's not. It doesn't hurt to at least try it on paper. But
sure,
yeah, consistency is probably the key.
Okay, from Tony. Sounds like a great idea, Paul. I'm very interested in the punter's education and improving the bottom line. Just some quick thoughts. Are the basics of form analysis still important even with good ratings these days? What are the main records that a punter should keep of their betting activities? Bet cycles, records, strike rate and pot. Variance and the impact of strike rate. The importance of speed maps and what they really mean. The influence of early pace. Winning and losing runs, why have them, how to handle them. The effect on the betting banks. How important is the market? And is it a true reflection of the horse's chance in a race? Tony, there's a lot of questions there, and we can't obviously address them.
We've addressed a few of them nearly already, but yeah, you could probably glance over them.
We could probably get, just in summary, we'll cover these today, Tony, but you probably need to get in touch with me and discuss them in more detail, I think. Are the basics of form analysis still important even with good ratings? Absolutely. The rating is a numerical expression of the horse's performance. You need to know how to apply that rating. Just because a horse earned a high rating in a race, say last start, doesn't necessarily make it the rating of choice today when building a market pre-race.
And so I'm not even a ratings person, but I would say you've got to know what's going into the rating, or if you trust it, that's fine. But then you've also very rarely going to get an adjusted rating that's like, you might just get a time rating or something like that. And then if you don't know what's going into finalise that rating according to the conditions of the day. So if you're getting something like that, which I believe would be extremely rare, that you're getting a finalised rating that's been adjusted,
you wouldn't get that. You
wouldn't get that. Then definitely form analysis has to be a part of it. So even if you're getting a rating, you have to adjust it yourself. I think that the process in creating the rating has to be sound, and I do believe that you need to make your own adjustments for in-run type events, those types of things that we've already discussed. If anyone purports to provide you with a rating that's fully adjusted for all those factors, I'd be very concerned. You need to have something that's pure and that's balanced, and from that you can then make your own adjustments as you see fit. And only as you go through that process will you learn and understand the mistakes that you make and what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. So it's not only important just to construct the market pre-race using the rating, but you need to go back and review the results and understand what it is that you might have done right, what you've done wrong, and how you can improve. And I'd say if it's a cheap price you're paying, a stronger chance it's not accurate, because Paul would know more than anybody how expensive it is to not just create a rating but then to adjust it manually, maintain a database's integrity and consistency just for what he wants it to be like. So if they're giving it away for a cheap price, and then that could only, like, for hundreds of dollars a week's cheap compared to what it costs to provide ratings and adjust them and maintain a database and then send them out to someone. So
absolutely. I mean, it's an arduous task and not one to be taken on lightly. But you can use our ratings, I believe, the WQR ratings, with confidence, and you can make your own adjustments for what you see as in-run adjustments that need to be made. But bear in mind too, things like distance, that's relevant. You can't take a 2,000 metre rating and apply it to a 1,200 metre race, or you can't take a 900 metre rating and apply it to an 11 or 1,200 metre race. There are certain boundaries that you need to understand that you can't bridge. Preferably, if you can find ratings that are over a similar distance, over a similar type of track, obviously they can prove more reliable. And especially with horses that rate consistently, they can be great in terms of the power that they offer you. But look, not everyone's a ratings person. I am. John's not.
I use them, but only as a guide. Especially they're a check to me, or if I'll see something that you might have rated highly, I'll have a look at it just to see whether I can find a hole in it, probably. Which you would have adjusted yourself. I'm obviously not getting the end secret rating. I'm just getting the rating that you're sending out to. I don't know what goes into it, but there's obviously more goes into your pricing than that straight rating, which is 100%.
Well, it's a combination of art and science.
Yes,
it's not just.
Yeah, so ratings say the science. You still need to apply the art.
You still need to
make
apply
a
the
final
art,
product.
which means that yes, the form analysis side of it is still very important, given the fact that there are.
We didn't really
good ratings
glance over that first point.
We've done that in detail, Tony. So
records of punters.
Records. You need to keep records of your bets. You need to make sure you're keeping a detailed record of all the bets that you make. You can just use a spreadsheet to do that, or you can use our program, and you can flag the horses and analyse them later across a range of metrics. But certainly you need to build a list and start off with just a simple Excel spreadsheet. Things like the date of the race, obviously, and the horse, and how much you've had on, and you might want to keep a record of perhaps where you bet.
Where you bet, price you've taken.
Yeah.
Probably the SP is important. Best tote's probably important, just to analyse whether you're maximising how you're betting. Even like your selections at the end of the day, you can be 10 or 20% difference in turnover over a day, and 10% out at the end of the year just by taking the wrong price. So,
the wrong price can be detrimental drastically to your betting. Even a 20 or 30 cent difference in dividend can make a massive result to you over the year. If you are using Axis, then you only really need to keep the date, the horse, and the amount that you wagered, because when you import it into Axis, it will then do all the analysis for you across the different price groups and so forth, and the different betting products. It's got a betting analyzer in there that will look at the drawdown and examine the runs of outs and the effect that has on your betting bank. It'll do all sorts of analysis in terms of the psychological side and the betting side, and how you can actually improve your betting, and it will show you where your weaknesses and strengths are. So if you need any help,
this is another thing I've not done, so I've got a lot of homework to do myself.
Indeed. So we've covered that, I hope. In terms of variance and impact on strike rate, I think the simple point that I want to make is that the higher the strike rate, the more reduced swing there is in terms of the variance that you encounter in your betting results, both on the negative and the positive side. So the lower the strike rate, the more difficult it is to profit long term, because of the effect that it has on your actual betting capital in terms of the drawdown. Would you agree with that?
100%, yeah, can't change that.
Importance of speed maps and what they mean.
Huge. Again, it's a bit of an advertisement for R2W today, but they are the best automated speed maps I've seen. But you still have to have personal touch involved, and you have to look at jockey changes, stables, distance changes. You must check those sort of things, especially even the map of the track itself, like distance to the first turn, things that are going to influence the speed of that race that cannot be done electronically from previous performances. So you really have to be pretty solidly hands-on from my perspective with the speed map, and try and be an oracle and try and predict what's going to happen with different horses changing different all the variances in today compared to previous starts. So and the end of what you produce from that is huge, because if you can be accurate with a map, you should be winning.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I agree with that. The maps that we produce are a fundamental starting point, but as John says, you need to be flexible enough to understand when you need to make allowances. That might be a significant gear change. It could be a young horse that's been snagged out of the barriers at a couple of starts because it's drawn wide. We know it's got good gate speed. It draws a soft barrier today. It's up in distance, and so you know suddenly that what the actual science can predict is obviously not going to factor in.
It's not like the greyhounds where they run 4.8 to the first turn and they run that every time, and you can just map them and that's what they are. The horses are just, there's so many variances that you can't put in there. You can do what you do and give a good starting point, but it's very hands-on process for mine, but it's a very vital one, and it's worth spending the time on to try and improve, because it's such a big part in the way races result of the result of the race is much to do with the map, especially on a lot of these tracks now with pretty biased tracks and things like that. It's not always about the strongest horses winning the race. It's a lot about the strongest positioned horses winning the race.
Yeah. Okay, influence of early pace, John.
Just basically covered that. So early pace is really important from a perspective of how the race is going to map out, what horses you're going to look for in the race, and then so a race with less early speed for me, I'm not so persistent on trying to find the strongest horses or where they're going to be, but a race that's run more truly due to early pace, or are they just talking about a horse with early pace? A horse with early pace is the ones that you're basically looking for to profit from to long term as well. So early pace in the race is important for the race shape and what horses you're looking for. Early pace in an actual horse is really important because they're just positive. A horse that can define a position and be in a strong, challenging position will win more races regardless of their talent level. So they can maximise their talent level just by being in a position to win a race. Whereas a horse that can't get there has to do something special to go past horses and beat other horses. So they need things in their favour. Doesn't matter how good they are. Whereas a horse that's there is just naturally there.
And there's a marriage between the influence of early pace and the map.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, that's right. So yeah, early pace from a race perspective is huge, and early pace from a horse perspective is huge. So whichever way you want to slice it, it's a very big point.
Winning runs and losing runs, why we have them, how to handle them, and the effect on your bank. Well, why we have them is simply it's called statistical variance. There's no escaping it. It doesn't matter how good a punter you are. It doesn't matter what your strike rate is. It doesn't matter what your profit is. At the end of the day, you will experience drawdown on your betting capital. And it's important to understand what the numbers look like. You can use tools. The standard deviation is the easiest one and the best one to use, I feel, for measuring what the potential drawdown could look like and the swings can look like in your betting. And no matter what your strike rate is, once again, no matter what your profit is, you're going to experience it. Most professionals or most serious punters would work to what they call a risk threshold. They would have a drawdown and in a very bad period could easily lose up to 50% of their betting bank, or have a drawdown on their betting bank. And that could come at the start of a betting cycle. So you might start with a $10,000 betting bank today, and in 3 months' time find that you've now got $5,000 left. Or it might be that you've grown 10,000 to 30,000 and now you have 15. But at some stage you will have a bad run. It's inevitable. There's nothing you can do to escape it. It's just statistically impossible, and you have to accept it. How you choose to manage it and how you react
psychologically
and how you manage that process,
and the toughness it takes to be consistent in your approach and just mentally know that there has to be a down, but as long as you're applying the same process, it has to level over time as well. So you've just got to have the confidence in yourself to keep your head down when the times are tough. Because the difference is an inch, between a good day and a bad day, a good month and a bad month, and a good year and a bad year. Like, it's just several inches. That's all that makes up, and there are variants.
The photos going your way, the good luck going your way. Getting the right price.
Everything that you factor into pricing you price at $4, it's a 3-to-1 chance. That means you're thinking, you don't think that horse is going to win every time. So therefore, a lot of those together, they can theoretically lose a lot of races in a row. You're always looking for you to maintain your edge, but it's not up to you where it falls. Where your good runs and bad runs fall. It's just about being consistent.
Turning up, playing the game consistently, understanding too that it's not so much the time, it's the number of bets. The greater number of bets that you have, the faster you will move from one end of the cycle to the other, or get through a particularly bad run, or perhaps see the end of a good run occur. So if you're having, say, a couple of bets on a weekend, if you hit a bad run, that could easily last 12 months.
12 months, yeah, easily. Easily. And it's not to say that you're going out to looking to have more bets just for the sake of it. You're trying to quantify your bets, and you want to apply your process maybe wider if you're only having that few amount of bets, or possibly you're just very narrow, like only having, that's obviously an extreme example, a few bets a week, but a lot of people do bet that way, and then wonder why, after 3 months they're struggling. It is simply, if you can apply what you're doing to a wider group and have more bets and quantify them, then you're going to be more consistent and not have longer the runs of outs. No doubt about that.
Yeah, Tony, we could sort of cover this in much more detail, and we'll probably look to do separate segments on factors like that because it's so important. Tony, your last point here is how important is the market? Is it a true reflection of each horse's value and probability? Well, the SP is essentially a distillation of all of the elements of the market collected together and obviously condensed into a final probability assessment of that horse. So it represents essentially all of the inside information, all of the players in the marketplace, both professional and hobby punters, stables, etc. John, you've got some points on what the SP means at different jurisdictions.
I just think that it's more important, or it's more accurate in the city because more people are looking at the meetings, doing the form on the meetings, having a bigger input on the meeting. So like I just find that, you know, even with people I deal with, a lot of people don't want to deal with the country because they don't look at it, you know, they work or for whatever reason, but they're still pretty diligent in how they approach metropolitan meetings. So I would say for every 20 people that look at a metropolitan meeting, there might be 1 or 2 look at the country. So the country has to be, for mine, I know the big syndicates still play, so it's going to be very close to accurate, but the city is going to be much more accurate for mine than country. So I take that nearly as gospel, a city SP, but the country, you still need to do a bit of investigation yourself because there is a gap there where you can improve on it.
And maybe the tote is where the tote comes in, those country markets, being that the syndicates are playing into the totes.
They're playing directly and they're betting them down to whatever they believe. So it's going to be a combination of the two will be better than the SP by itself because
the large percentage in the market.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so Tony, that covers your points. We've got one here from Dom. How can we get racing administrators to start to listen to the participants in racing? Is there so many smart minds on the likes of Twitter with good opinions and seems to make sense to other punters, but is there ever any chance of actually getting this information across to the leaders of the industry in the ivory castle? If we don't, the game will eventually fall away. Or do we just keep plodding away and things stay the same? John?
Yeah, I have to be careful because I'm licensed as a jockey manager in New South Wales, so I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea that I'm attacking anyone, which I'm definitely not, but it's obvious that punters are disgruntled and they feel like they are being poorly handled in the marketplace of the racing as a whole, and we do need a voice. The issue with the voice is how it gets to where it needs to get to and how we get everybody in the industry to listen because it's so disjointed and it's hard to, like if I had an issue now where I said I've been banned from a certain bookmaker for certain things, like I have an issue that you can buy milk from Bet365, but I can't buy milk from Bet365, or you can access a product from them and I can't.
Yeah.
And but who do I approach with that? It's not the licensee's job. It's basically got to be a federal thing, which doesn't exist. So at the moment, for issues I have with racing, there is no one for me to approach. So that has to be an issue in itself.
Unless you're within the NBL jurisdictions.
And then they're different in every state as well.
So you've got these competing agendas of principal racing authorities like Racing New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, etc., that aren't working together, that aren't actually demonstrating any collaboration on the important key issues, which makes it very, very difficult for punters to be represented and their voice to be heard. So we've got people like Richard Irvine, who's done a great job with Fair Wagering Australia, certainly been absolutely instrumental and key to getting minimum bet laws in place.
And got them through New South Wales and Victoria fairly quickly, but it's still taking, you know, they've made the decision in Queensland that it's going to happen, but it's still 6 months from being implemented.
Well, it was supposed to be on July. It was supposed to be July 1, and now we're looking at January next year. And WA, who don't care, who don't seem to feel it's important to address.
That's it. So even if someone like Richie can work really hard to be heard in a certain jurisdiction, it still has to be archaically spread throughout the country and approved by hundreds of different people who all have their own agendas, which is fine. You know, everyone's got their who employs them and their key indicators that they have to live up to, and you've got to understand that everyone, you know, like I might be angry with a certain jurisdiction for how they handle things, but I've got to understand what's behind their decisions too, and everyone has driving forces. The problem is that the punters as a whole really struggle to have a foothold in the market because we're not seen as important as we probably are, and definitely not as much as we believe we are. And it's just very difficult the way the landscape's structured at the moment.
We've got to get some change. I don't know how to actually do it, but any ideas that any of our viewers have got, please write in and we can discuss them. And if you've got
we
any
can push them
ideas,
on to other people that we believe might be able to get them to the next level. You know, it's probably not Paul and I that'll get it there, but we do know a lot of people, as the same as other places like the Racing Rant and those sort of people. If we raise those sort of issues on these sorts of shows, they tend to get into the mainstream quicker than, you know, people talking on Twitter and things like that. So hopefully we can help push things forward to help punters.
so if you've got ideas on how we can achieve this, please write into us and express those opinions. And if you've got any ideas in terms of maybe people we can get on the show, John,
Yeah, absolutely.
to discuss the points as well. Given that we're both in Queensland, obviously they need to be Queensland based to have the most chance of success there.
Absolutely.
But we'll move on. Thanks, Dom, for that. Morgan, you've got the last round here. Making the transition from a hobby to a professional punter. Don't just say to be more disciplined, as if it was that easy, everyone would do it. Daily task is what the professional punter undertakes. How to avoid being a gambler, just like the TAB want us to be. Resisting temptation, not listening to the media. How to watch trials and jump outs properly to pick future winners. And how to change previous bad habits and wrong beliefs. John?
So I would scrap the trial and jump outs out of this question, as it's just too big a topic to cover, and it's a very visual thing, but definitely something to be covered at a later stage. For me, there's not much between a hobby and a professional punt. Well, there's different levels, but professional punting is definitely about consistency of approach, checking all your boxes and making sure that you're not cutting any corners. Whatever you believe is your edge over the market, you're executing that every time the same way. You're constantly checking your results and how you can improve, and you're implementing those changes, consistently evolving to be the best you can be, just as like if you ran an ice cream shop, just as like you're a real estate agent. I'm a very feel sort of punter, so I've got to have checks on myself to make sure that I'm putting the same process together to come out with an outcome that I'm happy with. You know, that a horse should run well after it's run through my process. If I cut corners or miss things, I can very easily be basically guessing, which is what a hobby punter does. There's obviously many ways to do it. Your system's obviously going to be very different to the way I do things, but I think at the end of the day, what separates professionals from hobby punters is taking emotion out of it and going through a process, having an outcome, and then being rigid with whether you produce a price or a selection, however it is, you apply that to your staking, or that's just it's out of your hands emotionally.
Yeah. And
that's the difference between a hobby and a professional from my perspective.
Well said. Morgan, there's lots of ways to win at this game. There's no right way, no wrong way. You have to have a process. I agree with John. It has to be consistent. You have to constantly critique yourself. You've got to think of it as a business manager would, and be able to document that process and articulate that process to yourself. You've got to have an understanding of why you're making certain types of bets, what it is that it's attracting to you. You know, what aspects of the horse's form warrants consideration, why you're actually doing what you're doing. So that process is obviously something that you can develop over time. It's not something that you can master overnight. But I agree with John, you've got to have a process, and if you don't, and if you take shortcuts, you will be punished. This game has a nasty way of finding us out when we...
Yeah, everyone believes in the oath as God, and they believe in the... There's definitely a lazy God, and he definitely doesn't look upon you favourably. He might let you get away with it 1 or 2 days, and you think, geez, that was easy, I'll slacken off my approach, but he soon comes back to bite you in the arse tenfold. So
certainly does.
Yeah, definitely. That's the difference for mine.
Yep. Okay, Morgan, that's it for this week, and thanks everybody for taking the time to listen to the first show for the Punters Academy. You can find us on Twitter at TPAOZ, so that's TPA Oz. You can find me at Paul at ratingstowin.com.au or Paul at thepuntersacademy.com.au, or you can reach John through Racing Watch, or either of us on Twitter. So there's lots of ways to get your questions through to us. We'd like to get your thoughts and feedback on the show, and certainly ways in which we can improve. We'd also like to make a special mention to our good friends in Sydney at the Racing Rant, Mark, Glenn, Gordo. Certainly we're working in collaboration with them in terms of bringing you content. They've got definitely a more New South Wales, Sydney focus. We'll aim to be a little bit more diverse than that, and certainly talk a lot about Queensland racing as well, and some of the issues that are faced or facing punters and people who are interested in racing in our state and where we live. So on that note, we'll look forward to
apologies a little bit. We might look at a different location moving forward if there is. We always laugh with the racing rant with them working in a park sort of atmosphere. It was very quiet when we started here. It is our first week trying to find a place to work from, but if there is a bit of funniness with chopping and changing in the actual product itself, we will improve on it, and quickly. So
Indeed.
Thanks guys for your patience.
Well said. Thank you.
Thanks.
See you next week.